There was this girl that I went to high school with, and I didn't really know her, but from what I heard, she was pretty smart and bohemian out there. I remember the guidance counselor telling us about how she had this really amazing college essay about her vagina, which today, if you heard that, you would just roll your eyes, but back then, it was pretty crazy. You heard that and you go, wow, that's wacky. Anyway, I was Facebook friends with her while I still had a Facebook, and I saw from her post that she, for a living, was writing like BuzzFeed tier listicles. Shit like the 12 best bachelorette moments or 25 Disney princesses that would have voted for Trump. And I remember once I was on my Facebook with a buddy, and for some reason we were playing this game where I would show him pictures of people I knew, and he would look in their eyes and tell me if they were evil or not. And we happened to see her post one of her articles, and the caption in some way made reference to like, hey, I created another journalism. I don't know if she actually wrote in that Reddit tier fag way, but who knows. So I saw that and I went into the comment section and just quoted the word journalism. And I typed that and I laughed to myself and I thought, nah, that's too mean, don't post that. But because my buddy was there, he said, do it. And I was like, well, that's all I need. So I posted it. And she unfriended me for that. Which kind of implies that I hit a nerve, right? On some level, she must feel some type of way about the kind of air quotes journalism she's putting out there. It's a long way down from writing about your vagina. And you might be thinking, hold on a second, don't you be gatekeeping journalism, you bigot? But I don't know, I think gatekeeping is good. At least as far as communities go, gatekeeping keeps out the kind of people that ruin communities. So if you're complaining about gatekeeping, you're probably someone who would destroy a community. For labels or titles or status things, like calling yourself a journalist, I suppose that still kind of applies, because if you lump yourself in with actual journalists and then put out just garbage, you're ruining the image of all journalists, right? Everyone who subscribes to that label. And I remember people writing little social media posts about gatekeeping is bad. I am a rock climber and a writer and a dancer and black. All kinds of things. And most of them I couldn't speak to, but some of them, like, I'm a writer, and then you know this person personally, and this person does not write at all. In what sense are you a writer? I'm not even trying to hold out for some kind of achievement, like you gotta get published, just, you don't even do the fucking thing. I think it's because it's like well, I said this before, I think it's a status thing, because the status of being a writer is, smart, intellectual, talented, it implies you work at something. There's a lot of baggage that comes with that label, and most of it is positive. And maybe I'm just being contrarian, but I found myself ditching labels that were positive, or mostly positive, as I found more and more people latching onto the label without actually being the thing. Like, I think I write enough to call myself a writer. But I was interviewed on another podcast for a book I self-published a while ago, and I made some comment about how I'm not really a writer, I'm just a guy who wrote a thing. I know one of my friends who listened to it quoted that and said I'm going to make a lot of people mad with that. And we should just ignore whatever neuroticism in me caused me to ditch labels when it seems like in my warped worldview they've been corrupted. But we should look at why people are so desperate to have these labels. Because even aside from titles you can give yourself, like, I am a hiker, whether you hike or not, it seems like people are always looking for something to just identify themselves. I've never really felt like I needed to do that. Not as a full-blown adult, at least. There are things I do, and they're important to me, and I spend a lot of time doing them, but I don't really think of myself as a writer or a retard podcaster. Maybe I call myself retard a lot. Take all the negative ones. I think what it is, and I really don't have much evidence for this, but I think if you don't have a solid identity, you're desperately looking for something to give you one. And that might be latching onto labels and just listing out all these things that you supposedly are. Because you can call yourself a writer and you don't write, but you might think you do. You might think, oh, well, I wrote that short story in college that one time, so I'm a writer. Everybody thought it was pretty good. And meanwhile, you haven't written in like 4 years, but you're a writer. That's your identity. That's who you are. And I think you get that also with people identifying with like race or gender or nationality. Because I don't think of myself as any of those things. Like, I understand that I am, right? I know what color I am. I know I've got a dick, but I just feel like I'm me. I think maybe because a few years ago, I consciously decided that I needed a purpose, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, because this was right when I started working my first full-time job out of school, and I saw just the routine I was going in. I was looking ahead and I thought, am I just going to do this for 40, 50, 60 years and then fucking die? Is that my whole life? And so I chose a purpose, I stuck with it, and now I don't have this identity crisis that seems to be so common. I think maybe we have a crisis of purpose. People don't have a reason to live, and so they go a little crazy because they need one, and it doesn't occur to them that they should just think about it and come up with one. So they start looking for reasons from anywhere they can think of. And the saddest ones to me are the people who kind of thought about it and chose happiness, try to be happy and maximize pleasure. It seems really juvenile and like setting yourself up for failure. But who am I to judge? I don't remember how I got here from making fun of the journalist girl, but I guess listing Disney princesses is less harmful than just being a chronic liar and a cog of the propaganda machine. I don't want to get into that. And it seems super obvious, right? So why bother? But I did try to write an article for one of those types of websites. It might have been BuzzFeed or Cracked or I don't know. They're all kind of the same. And that article was about the hierarchy of life, which already was kind of at a disadvantage to get published on their site, right? Because they're not looking for shit like that. They're looking for Disney princesses. But I started the process. They offered any feedback at all and said I should change anything. And I said, well, fuck this. I'm not changing anything. So now you get it a little modified because I wrote it a long time ago and it may be hard to believe, but I was even dumber back then. So the hierarchy of life. Big things consume small things. Thank you for attending my TED Talk. Please leave. So if you went to 6th grade, which maybe half of you did, you might have learned that cells are the building blocks of life. But they're not atomic objects themselves, right? They're made up of organelles, molecules, atoms, subatomic particles. Maybe there's something even lower than that we haven't discovered or don't understand. And each of those is a level of biological organization, a piece of the structure of life as we know it, even if none of those are living things themselves. Atoms aren't alive, not by our arbitrary definition of what is life, but without atoms there would be no life. It is an integral part of the structure. If you stack up all the levels of hierarchy that make up life, like a pyramid, at the very bottom we got spooky mummies, and then one level up, those spooky mummies make up subatomic particles, and so on. But you can climb that pyramid and you get to this lifeline, which is right between organelles and cells. So cells are the lowest level in the pyramid that is considered living. So we call it the building block of life, but it's still made up of all of these things below it. As you climb the pyramid, these structures get bigger and more complex, composed of all the lower levels. So above the lifeline, this is life. This is what we call life and how we understand it. And below it is just chemistry and magic. So if we go higher up on the pyramid, you can look at single-cell organisms, which make up more than half the biomass on Earth. So clearly that works. And we also know that this isn't exempt from the hierarchy, right? It's just all the pieces that build it are not considered living. But even some single-celled organisms will cluster together to improve their lot in life, either to more efficiently consume resources or to survive hard times or whatever. And then the remaining life, the biomass that's multicellular life, this is where cells will specialize and collaborate to create larger, more complex organisms. And these can utilize different resources that are harder to get to when you're single-celled, so it's a niche. And it's not really in direct competition with single cells, so both can kind of thrive and evolve in their own lanes. And you can see this specialization and collaboration in everything. Plants have specialized cells to collect water and nutrients in their roots, and they got cells in their leaves for capturing energy from sunlight, and cells for making phone calls, and all kinds of specialized cells. And it's also skipping over a few levels of the pyramid from single cell to organisms, because there's also tissues, organs, organ systems, maybe other stuff. I don't know, I'm not smart. But organisms aren't the top of the hierarchy. You can keep going beyond that. Kind of like the lifeline. There's another line higher up where you cross into structures of more than one organism. Superorganisms. I'm not sure if this really even deserves a line. I think it's just like a human bias, because it's hard to imagine that we're a part of something bigger. I mean, not me. I'm the culmination of all evolution. But you're a cog. But these structures arise naturally, just like cells becoming organisms. The classic example, of course, is ants and colonies. They have no centralized decision maker or brain. The queen is mostly just an egg machine. The colony bike. She just gets a train run on her and produces offspring. Each individual ant, a full-blown organism on its own, is just a building block, and each one acts on a set of rules based on chemical cues or interactions with other building blocks or environmental pressures. And this distributed brain can do some pretty fucking crazy things. For a collection of stupid ants, right? Millions of these retarded little bugs can somehow agree on nest locations and locate food and solve the fucking traveling salesman problem. And they're all specialized, just like the cells are. You might be scavenging, you might be caring for children, you might be cleaning up tunnel poop, you might be killing other ants from the wrong tribe. And the colony thrives, it grows, expands, and most importantly, it persists. Because the colony, in a weird sense, strives to live, to perpetuate itself. It has no brain, not a real one, but it strives, as all things strive. And so the colony is kind of an abstract monster for the benefit of and consuming individual ants. Just like the abstract monster of organisms consuming organs and cells, and the abstract monster of cells consuming organelles and french fries, and so on. The goals of the colony supersede the goals of the individual. So on the whole, as members of the colony, each ant benefits from the collective action, even if some individual ants don't. Like if you have to sacrifice yourself to protect the colony from angry bees or refugees, that's worth it for the greater good. At least from the point of view of the colony and all your colony men who don't have to die. And I'm not really being subtle about getting to this, especially because this is the exact point where I call forwarded in episode 1742. We're kind of like ants. Our abstract monster is society, the system, set to devour us all. I've talked about this a lot, right? Jamie, pull up those quotes from episode 47.3 from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and I don't know, Nietzsche, Marcus Aurelius, they all have, you know the ones. I don't even have to tell you which quotes. I know you're a super fan and you just know every quote by heart, better than I do. And every one of them, they all apply. But we know this abstract monster strives in its own unthinking way to exist forever and ever, and its goals supersede the goals of the individual, which is me, which is you, which is your mom, which is all of us individually. And on the whole, if things are working right, we should all benefit overall from the actions of the monster, even if some of us individually are eaten. And this kind of trickles down into our individual values too. Education is good for the society, for the system, because we want people to be trained and specialized so they can work together and innovate and advance society. And even if you're not trained and specialized in like science, we need people to clean up the trash. We need people to take care of the kids. Somebody's got to clean up the tunnel poop. And because of all that, education is good for you. Although now we have a glut of fucking useless majors, and so a lot of people go to college and it's not good for them. But maybe somehow this ends up being good for the system as a brainwashing tool or some shit. I don't know. I'm not God. Consider yourself lucky I'm not. So many fucking floods. So we all exist within and for this abstract monster, just like ants to the colony. But the big difference between us and ants, the ant never asks the point of the colony. And that seems to be all we can do. We're always wondering about our purpose and why we do shit. We have strong senses of individual identity, so sometimes maybe the best move overall for everybody is to go get yourself killed for the glory of the society. Go to the Middle East and die for oil companies. But that's not the best for you. The best for you is to die for Wall Street. And I guess we have the audacity to ask, well, why me? Send someone else. Make someone else do it. I don't really know if this is good or bad for society, for life as a whole. I suppose this is an experiment, free will and individuality, or intelligence, sentience, something. Going kind of well so far. We've progressed a lot, but we're also destroying a lot. Who knows? I feel like if we make it to Mars and colonize another planet, then it's been a successful experiment. Experiment for life, I mean, not necessarily humans. Because life is a monster, an abstract monster, an emergent thing. So if you ask what's the meaning of life, and I don't know if you know this, but it took me a long time to figure this out. When you say meaning, they mean some archaic definition, and they're really asking what's the purpose of life? Why are we here? So the meaning of life is to exist, to continue existing, to persist. Not your life, mind you. Who cares about your life building block? Only you. Maybe. Life as a concept, a monster, as this enormous force in the universe, strives to exist, to perpetuate itself forever. There's no foreseeable endgame. It's a cosmic game of Tetris, and we're all just a bunch of squigglies and L pieces. Except me. I'm a line piece. But the only goal, the only reason to exist is to exist. If life were bad at existing, it would have stopped existing. So in a sense, evolution exists outside of what we call life. All things strive. The rocks strive to continue being rocks, and any similar construct that didn't strive to stay bound together was dispersed by the universe. At a bare minimum, everything that exists must strive to exist enough to overcome the background entropy of existence. I use the word existence a lot there, and I think it's starting to sound ridiculous. Starting journalism. So some of these unliving things happen to bind together in a way that created life, which I guess proved to be a pretty advantageous mutation on Earth, at least. I can imagine some fucking retard fundamentalists just raging. I did not evolve from a rock. So if we look at you as an individual, if you live long enough to pop out some babies, then you've done your part as a building block of life. Life continues for a little longer because you got laid. Even a desire to want children is programmed into us for the good of the species and for the life monster. strange to think about how we're driven by things that don't exist. Except they do. And abstractions, though. So deep, bro. So we're at the whims of made-up monsters. That's kind of horrific, but it could be worse. We could be bound to the whims of us, humans. Because I don't know what chickens were originally meant to be, but now they're meant to be delicious. We breed them to grow larger, faster, with less food, and we keep the species going. Is it the best for chickens? Is it the best for the life monster? I don't know. Is it the best for us? Well, I can't live without those fucking tendies, so those chickens will just have to pay that price for us. And I guess that makes us the life monster of chickens. And cows. And goats. And stay tuned for me to list every animal. Given that we have, with some amount of success, hijacked the evolution of many animals and plants and fungi, you think someone has hijacked ours? Aliens, reptiles, mole people, men with an abundance of hubris? Whether it's actually happening or not, it seems pretty obvious that there are people who think they can and are trying to take hold of the reins and set our purpose and guide the species. I bet they call us useless eaters. So if you want to get to the actual clickbait title, here's the part where it goes sexual. What is the meaning of life? At the most basic level, to persist, live long enough to have kids and ensure that they also have kids and you're good. But beyond that, it's whatever you make it or allow it to be made. And that's probably a cop-out, but the point is you have to take responsibility for yourself and your life and your purpose. Because if you don't decide on a purpose for yourself, you'll inherit one, whether you like it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. And maybe you'll just inherit the default life purpose of having kids, and there doesn't have to be anything wrong with that. Maybe that would even be a lucky roll as far as purpose inheritance goes these days. When I was younger, I scoffed at the idea of calling these people cattle. But I was a retard and a little shit. Because you can think you're above that, and you can think we're the enlightened ape, but if we don't have kids, then we'll still die out. To some extent, the life monster is still benevolent. Not entirely, it still devours us. It's just like every other abstract monster. And if that's not what you want to make your purpose, you might adopt some religious identity. Or maybe it's something that a person playing God has slithered into your heart. And I think that's something that's happening a lot right now because of that crisis of purpose or identity. Or is it community, belief, religion in the identity sense I've used in previous episodes? This kind of seems like it's connected somehow to why everything is amazing and nobody's happy. It seems to me like someone or someones are trying to fill that void for anyone who will let them. And maybe I'm a crazy schizoid, and that's not bad. Maybe those are good, empowering purposes and narratives to bring into your core. Maybe they're completely destructive, hollowing you out and filling you back up with machine man blood. Maybe it's a bit of both. Maybe. No promises. I think if you think about it and you're conscious of it and you decide, yes, I want that to be my purpose, that's great. But you should think about it. What's the meaning of your life?